He's a curious mixture, journalist, poet, critic, lyricist, who was once dubbed, and he's still blushing, the thinking woman's crumpet. Ladies and gentlemen, Clive James.
What was that tune?
I don't know. It has some link with your past, I think. Would you like to comment, first of all, Mr. James, upon the term thinking woman's crumpet?
It's a terrible term. How did that ever get attached to me, of all people?
I don't know. You tell me.
I think someone once called Joan Bakewell the thinking man's crumpet.
That was Frank Muir.
Which was spot on and very interesting. Mm-hmm. But how such a term ever got attached to me, I don't think it's very firmly attached. I think you'll find it'll drift off.
Probably the end of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Probably about now, as a matter of fact. While we're talking.
Was there any indication in your childhood that you might end up being this term, thinking woman's crumpet?
God, there was certainly no indication of that. Or anything else I've ended up as a matter of fact. One of the things that impresses me about my own career, which I think of constantly, is that it's what I'm doing now has got no connection with childhood or even early adulthood. I don't know if you find this about your own life, but I've just sat down recently to write my early life. And the part that sheer accident plays in it is so staggering that I don't like to think about it.
It is amazing. The book that you've written, actually, is called Unreliable Memoirs. And I think, an unsolicited testimony, that it's one of the funniest, most beautiful books about growing up I've ever read. It's smashing. It really is. Tell us a little bit about your background, about where you came from. You grew up in a suburb of Sydney, didn't you?
Could I just say first how moved I am to hear you say that? And how moved my publisher's going to be if he's watching today.
It's well meant. It really is. It really is.
Yeah, Sydney is where I grew up. Just outside of Sydney, in a little suburb called Cogra, which is on Botany Bay, which is just about where the first convicts landed. You realise Australia is one of the most successful British exports. Because Australia began as Britain sending its prisoners out to Australia. And, a couple of hundred years went by and they will come back again.
What kind of a house, what kind of an area?
It was a very, very small house. It seemed to be quite large at the time. A couple of years ago I went back to visit it and was staggered by the change in scale. In fact, for a while I couldn't believe that it was my house. I thought the real house had been taken away and a smaller one had been put there in a smaller plot of ground. The mind really does play those tricks, especially if you've been away for a long time. I've been away almost 20 years now.
What about the people? There's a lot of rich characters inhabited your childhood, or so it would seem. Tell us first of all about your family.
Well, they were rich in personality. They weren't rich in any other way. That's the first thing to say about them. It was a very low-income area, low-income people. But in Australia, that is different from being low-income in Britain. The Australian class system it exists, but it's not quite as strong as it is here. The first thing to say is the standard of living is very high. I mean, if you aren't doing well, you're still doing quite well. And everyone had steak 3 times a day and that sort of thing. So, you hear automatic laughter from the audience if that was impossible, but I swear to you that I had meat for breakfast every day of my life.
Big steak.
Cold meat from the refrigerator surrounded by white fat. It's made me what I am today, overweight.
Did you have an outside loo?
Oh, all the loos were outside, absolutely. In fact, you're doing well if you had a loo at all. No, the loo was outside, and it was non-sewered. In other words, every week the man came to take away the full pan and bring an empty one, and he was called the dunny man. And the dunny man arrived on the dunny cart, and the dunny cart came down the street, clank bonk, clank bonk. And the idea was you drew your blinds, it didn't look, because it was generally accepted, it wasn't discussed how the lavatory pan was changed every week, you see. It wasn't a subject for gentlemen. It happened by magic, you see. Actually, you could hear the dunny man running down the side of the house, dum, 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 like that. And then you hear clank, bonk, clang as he picked up the full pan, which is, after a week was bad news. Right? I mean, I won't go into detail, but it's hot, right? It's hot in that country.
Flies?
Yeah, flies. Yeah, flies at least, right? A very, very grim scene in that pan. He'd clip a lid on it, he'd move that one aside, thunk. You could hear all this through the walls, jerry-built houses. Put down the empty pan, bonk, and run back down the side of the house with the full pan on his shoulder. Dum, 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 dum. And he never missed his footing. But every Christmas, you acknowledge the dunny man's presence by leaving a bottle of beer in the dunny, right? And by the time he got to us that Christmas, he must have been, sampling the beer, because I heard him come down the side of the drive, dum, 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 clank, bonk, change the pan, heave, as he put the full pan on his shoulder, and then running back up the side with the patch, dum, dum, dum. But I'd left my bicycle lying there, you see. Now, on the way down, he must have hurtled over it, but on the way back, he forgot. So I heard this terrific noise, which sounded exactly like a man who's carrying a full dunny pan on his shoulder, tripping over a 26-inch frame Melbourne Star bicycle. You know? And then there was an even more sinister sound of the lid springing off. Because it made a boing, ping sound like that. Right? I looked at my mother, and my mother had a hand over her eyes like this. But she still wasn't acknowledging his existence, you see. So I went out and I took a look down the side of the house, and there he was. And you know, well, no, really, no. The stunning thing was that none of it had missed him.